Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Please. Uh, just a raise of hand. I have a question or two for everyone over here. How many of you here are already actively working on DPDP implementation and beyond policy drafting? Please raise of hands. One, two, three. That's all? Okay. And how many are still in the assessment and planning phase? I'm assuming there'll be more in that for the DPDP implementation. Okay, okay. Well then, with that, let me turn your attention to a topic that sits at the core of every digital initiative today, that is data privacy and compliance, right? As data becomes central to enterprise strategy, understanding the practical challenges of DPDP implementation and how to address them becomes very critical. To share insights on this important subject, please welcome Mr. Nitin Dhaute, who is the head of data and privacy at APMA and Global at Novartis for the session on DPDP implementation, bottlenecks and their mitigation. Can we have a huge round of applause for Mr. Dhaute? He is going to make a lot of complications really easy for you, so you please pay attention.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Nitin and I'm part of the data privacy and AI governance team at Novartis. Thanks to NASSCOM for the kind invite, right? So when Shantanu approached for this particular topic, I thought maybe we'll go back a bit in time, right? Maybe 10 years or so. The year is 2017, right? And that's when a landmark judgment was actually passed in India, right? And I think a lot of you would be aware what that landmark judgment is about. It's the Puttaswamy judgment, as it is called as. And that established the right to privacy as a fundamental right for all of us in India, right? And that also set India on a journey to develop the privacy law, the omnibus privacy law as we see it enacted as of November, right? So we went through various versions. Some of the versions were good, some of the versions were not so good. We started with full localization requirements in, I think, the first version which came out. That got toned down over the years to almost no localization that we have right now, right? And as we stand here today, we saw that in the month of November last year, the rules around the Data Protection Act have been enacted, right? So they have been notified. So we have a law which is in effect now, right? Companies have been given a grace period of 18 months. Most of the provisions are 18 months. Some requirements become effective in stages, but most of the requirements become effective in 18 months, right? We are already 2 months into the journey. And if I saw some raise of hands when the call out went out as to how many people are involved in either implementation or planning activities. But I think it's important that if you have not started the journey, you get started, right? What I wanted to talk about is a few things which would be helpful in either the planning stages or the implementation stages. I'm not going to cover the specific privacy provisions which are there in the Act. That's maybe a topic for another discussion because there's enough discussion, there's interpretation required, the context might be different in the various industries that you work in, right? So I'll not talk about the provisions, but what would be required to help you to succeed is what I'll try to talk about, right? A lot of it is based on experience that I've been in the privacy industry and to a certain extent in the security industry over the last, I would say, 10 years or so, right? The first thing which I wanted to cover is positioning, right? How do you position your privacy program, right? And there are multiple options over here, and it's not to say that one option is wrong or the other option is great, right? But you can position it as a compliance program, you can position it as a legal provision requirement that need to be met and so on and so forth, right? And this particular point maybe takes me back to a discussion that I had with a few data privacy counterparts early last year actually, right? And the discussion was if you are required to present around the Data Privacy Act, which was at that point of time going to come up, how would you position, how would you present to the board or to the management committee or to the leadership teams as well, right? And the kind of outcome which came out of the discussion was that we would try to place it or position it as a trust program, right? Not as a compliance program, not as a legal requirement that needs to be met. And if you look at it, the options that you have, right? Positioning it as a trust program, for example, as against positioning it as a compliance program, right? A board member maybe is more likely to pay attention to you if you talk about establishing trust with your customers, establishing trust with your internal employees, establishing trust with the larger society as such, right? As against telling them, okay, this is a compliance program, I need to do 4 or 5 things to meet the requirements as such, right? Now, underlying, you might still end up doing the same set of activities or similar set of activities, but the positioning is going to be very, very critical, right? And it can set you on the right path, maybe from the beginning itself, right? So one suggestion that I would have for all of us is think about how you want to position your program to begin with, right? Whether you want to position it as just a mere compliance program, which can make it as a tick box exercise, right? Or you want to do it something differently as well, right? So the first point that I want to highlight is to how you want to position the program. And that kind of sets the tone for a lot of the downstream activities that you might want to look at as well, right? I do have a few points which I can talk about. I'll try not to refer too much to the slide because it kind of creates a distraction. The second point that I want to talk about is management alignment, right? So we all are aware that you need to have a tone at the top, you need to have buy-in or endorsement from the top management. Of course, yes, even for a privacy program, you do need that, right? And that's something that you kind of can take care of by talking to the board or presenting to the board or to the top management and getting their endorsement as such, right? But I think the practical experience that I can share is that apart from aligning with the top management, there is a good amount of need to align with the middle management and the employees who are actually going to implement some of your processes, right? The privacy processes as such, right? And that's where a good amount of attention needs to be paid. And that will help you to kind of roll out smoothly whatever activities you want to do, right? And the reason for that is the middle management are the, let's say, the business function owners, the process owners. They consist of employees who will actually do some of the processing activities as well, right? So building that rapport with the middle management, ensuring that they understand what you need from them is also equally important, right? So yes, we pay attention to the top management, we get that buy-in. At the same time, we pay equal amount of attention to the middle management and the employees who are kind of going to run your processes as well, right? You can do this. Now, how do we actually do that, right? You can do this by ensuring that you get enough time to present to the leadership teams. For the middle management, they have their own, let's say, town halls, or they have their off-sites and so on and so forth. Get yourself invited to those, right? And you have to make a bit of effort from your side. Maybe they may not come proactively to you and ask you to present, but you have to get yourself invited to those kind of forums, right? See how you can establish some of the privacy KPIs, as we call them, right? And good examples of privacy KPIs would be ensuring that trainings are completed, awareness is built at all the levels, and ensuring that the privacy assessments are completed for their business processes, right? So try to embed those privacy KPIs into their processes as such, right? The overall goal for this particular point is to establish accountability, right? So if you really look at privacy, right, you can think of it as a how should I say, legal matter or a compliance matter. But at the end of the day, we ourselves have to realize, and we have to make business realize, that it's a business matter, right? So privacy is very much a business matter. Just like security is a business matter, privacy is also a business matter, right? And as you focus on working with the top management and the middle management, the goal is to create that accountability. Because at the end of the day, the business is the one who owns the processes, right? And that's where the work happens, right? That's where they're going to process personal data, either of your internal employees or of customers or other stakeholders as well, right? So that's the second point which I wanted to highlight. The next one is around inventory, right? So where do you start, right? So for a successful privacy program, one thing that you need to know is what your organization or enterprise is doing, right? And when I say what the enterprise is doing, in terms of which processes you're running, which function has which processes, how do these processes have interdependencies, how do these processes are interacting with the outside world. So you may have vendors, you may be providing services to others. Being aware about all these processing activities is kind of the starting point for everything, right? Unless you are really aware about these activities, the remaining tracks that you want to implement, and we'll talk about those tracks in a couple of minutes, really won't be helpful as such, right? So make sure that you are able to get a good inventory in place of the processing activities in your company, right? If you have the luxury of a budget for a tool or an automated tool, just by all means go for it. But if you don't, the practical aspect is that you can still start small. You can start talking to the business process owners, documenting that in an Excel worksheet. Right? It can be as simple as an Excel worksheet where each row will represent a process, and then you have columns which talk about, okay, what the process is about, what data it kind of covers, are there third parties involved, are there cross-border transfers involved, and so on and so forth, right? So having an inventory in place, and you would have heard this term called as records of processing activities from a GDPR perspective, right? It's essentially having a good inventory in place as such, right? And then that leads the tone for a lot of the other activities which need to be done, right? So ensure that you have a good inventory, which is validated by the business teams, and that will set the tone for a lot of your other activities as well, right? The next thing which I wanted to cover is in terms of the communication, right? So yes, you have got the top management approval, you have got middle management attention as well, and their endorsement for supporting your requirements, right? But the program is a good 12 months to maybe 18 months and even beyond that, right? And you just can't keep silent during that time. You need to have a good communication plan in place. You need to keep engaging with the various teams. So a good communication plan, how you're going to engage with the business teams, how you're going to talk to the employees, right? So again, examples of how you can do it is that you have a cadence of how you want to report, a cadence of issues that you're facing, a cadence of how you want or where you want support from these business teams, right? That communication has to be a constant kind of communication, right? And the sooner you establish that communication plan and the sooner you are able to kind of follow up on the communication requirements, I think it's going to be easier for you to be in touch and not just communicate what you want the teams to do differently, but also hear from the business teams, right? Because you need to have a two-way communication. If, let's say, business has some challenges in, let's say, some business priority, or there's an audit going on where they can't spend time on what you need, there has to be a mechanism for hearing from them as well, right? So that two-way communication is something which is going to really help make things better for you, right? The other thing which I wanted to cover is in terms of how are you going to look at the various requirements, right? And to a certain extent, as I said, I won't go into the specific provisions, but think about what is the scope of your coverage, right? GCCs here, for example, a lot of the enterprises here are from GCCs, right? Understand what is the scope, what is the applicability of the regulations for you, right? For example, there is a specific provision which exempts data which is brought from outside, so data which is personal data which is collected outside and then processed here under a contract. A lot of that processing is exempt, right? So see if that applies to your enterprise, right? There are requirements around transparency, there are requirements around contracting, there are requirements around cross-border transfers and so on and so forth, right? See what are the tracks that you need to have in place, right? As you develop a project plan and share that with the business teams, make sure that the various tracks that you define, and I've just given a few examples over here, right? Make sure that the tracks you define are covering what is applicable for you as an enterprise, right? So make sure that there is nothing which is kind of left uncovered, for example, and the tracks should make sure that you are able to meet the requirements as such. Do keep in mind that these various tracks are interconnected, right? So the first thing which I talked about, the inventory part of it, that kind of sets the tone for pretty much everything else. If you look at the transparency track, it needs inputs from the inventory track, it needs inputs from your cross-border track, and so on and so forth, right? So these tracks are not siloed tracks. They are something which will kind of have cross-references and interdependencies as well. So as you manage these tracks, make sure that you are aware about those interdependencies as such, right? The last point which I wanted to cover is around the various teams that will be involved, right? So it's one is maybe the privacy team, which will kind of drive this program, but you also need a lot of support from other functions as well, right? Examples of that would be your legal team, your compliance team, your IT team, and of course the business functions who are actually going to do a lot of the implementation, right? How do you ensure collaboration between all these functions, right? Because you alone as a privacy team or the privacy program team cannot do everything, right? You need inputs, you need support, you need the other teams to help you with a lot of the implementation activities, right? So how do you build that collaboration between these teams, right? And there are, of course, various ways of doing that. You have governance mechanisms. You can set up a steering committee. If you have a large organization across India itself, how do you make sure that the national level teams as well as the regional level teams and the local teams are able to coordinate and collaborate effectively? Steering committees, you have governance committees, and so on and so forth. Make sure that you have something built in. And again, you need to have buy-in from the management towards these governance committees that you have as well, right? So these are some of the points. I know it's like maybe a minute and a half left is what I see on the clock over here. But these are some of the points that I can think of in terms of making sure that you're able to progress well, right? You have the right level of buy-ins, you have the right level of understanding of your company processes, you have the right kind of project plan, the communication plan, and so on and so forth. As I said, I won't talk about specific provisions as such, but these are some of the things that we are trying to do as well, right? Just to give a couple of examples from Novartis side, I talked about building a trust-based program, right? So our privacy program is based around the ethical use of data and technology, right? So that's how we position our program. Yes, internally, yes, we are part of the compliance team, but we try to make sure that when we talk to our business stakeholders as well as to the outside world, we talk about ethical use of data, right? And that in turn leads to trust, and that in turn leads to other benefits that we get from that as well, right? At Novartis, again, we have a privacy program which is already on the way, in progress. We have presented to the board over here. We have started talking to the business functions. We already have an inventory in place, and so on and so forth, right? So again, I've tried to bring in the practical experience to the fore over here. And with that, I'll stop, right? I'm happy to take maybe a question if there is some time, right? And I'm available after this as well if anybody has any specific points around the program itself as such, right? But thank you, and I'll pause here for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please stay here. We would like to felicitate you. I would like to invite Sudhanshu sir to kindly felicitate Mr. Dhaute. And I really hope that the audience have benefited from your insights. Thank you. Thank you so much.